Jack Silver, the program director of 95.5 KLOS, Southern California's best rock. And as a public service, just a favor to our listeners and everyone checking us out on 955KLOS.com, I'm here with Top Gun DUI Defense Attorney Myles L. Berman, a close friend, personal friend of ours. But also, Myles, it's such an important time of the year with the 4th of July. And a lot of our fans who listen to KLOS, and they're going to be at barbecues and family parties and maybe having a beer or two over the 4th of July. And I thought I'd bring you in and we can share it with the people checking us out online. What do you think people should expect in the 4th of July and the things they should be aware of if they're going to have a couple drinks during the 4th of July holiday?
Well, first of all, Jack, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. And I always like being able to communicate and help people out, especially during 4th of July and other holidays throughout the year. This 4th of July, there's going to be a tremendous amount of DUI checkpoints.
Yeah.
So, as a matter of fact, on our website, we'll post at topgundui.com, we'll post.
By the way, that's good information to know about because these checkpoints are everywhere. So you'll have that information.
Correct. And one of the requirements is that the police are supposed to publish the location of the checkpoints. So we actually help the police departments or police agencies oftentimes send to us their location of the checkpoints. So it's something that we're also providing as a public service and helping the police satisfy one of their requirements.
Yeah.
But the checkpoints are going to be at all different places all throughout Southern California, and there's going to be a whole bunch.
So if I'm driving on the 4th of July
Right.
and I see a checkpoint, I know by my house on Ventura Boulevard, I just went to a buddy's house, watching one of the Laker games or something. I'm driving home, and the whole thing started to funnel in. I'm
Right.
going, what the heck is going on? So what should a fan of our station do when they see a checkpoint ahead, even if you had just one or two beers at a barbecue?
Well, first of all, checkpoints are supposed to have an escape route. And in other words, if somebody doesn't want to drive into the checkpoint,
Yeah.
they should have the option of driving through the escape route. The problem is that many times police agencies know that people are going to try to avoid the checkpoints. So when they turn off or go off to a different direction or take an escape route, they end up having people stationed there. Sometimes they're called scouts to watch people to see if they commit any other type of traffic violation, and then pull them over and begin to investigate them.
Oh, I see.
Now that's a different scenario of actually driving through the checkpoint.
Okay, so say I'm in that line, and I feel good, but maybe I had a beer and at the barbecue. So when I'm in the line, and the guy, do I put my hands up and say, "Take me, Joe"? What do I do?
Well, first of all, you have to assume when you're coming through a police checkpoint, as well as coming in contact with the police not at a checkpoint,
Right.
that you always have to be on your best behavior because you have to assume you're being videotaped or audio taped, and for sure being audio taped, because you don't want these tapes to come back to haunt you in the event that later on you want to fight your case.
Yeah.
So first, always be respectful and always be on your best behavior. Yeah. Now, the only thing that I can do, Jack, is I can tell people what their rights are, and what they decide to do at that point in time is up to them. Okay. So when you're driving through a checkpoint, basically all you have to do is show your identification, your driver's license,
your registration.
Right, proof of insurance, and your registration. Beyond that, people don't, but they almost always do, but people don't have to answer to the officer's questions, where they're coming from, where they're going to, how much they have to drink, things of that nature. And it's a tough call, and it takes a strong constitution for somebody to have.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a nice pun, a strong constitution. We have the constitutional right not to incriminate ourselves.
Sure.
So when they go through the checkpoint, they're going to be asked a whole series of questions, and the officer is going to be looking for signs of impairment.
Yeah.
One of the things the officers do is check the eyes. That's called the horizontal gaze nystagmus test. But anyway, they're just looking for a certain type of a reaction with the eyes when they go left to right.
So basically, just answer the questions, get through there, give the guy the information, your driver's license, etc. And obviously, the assumption is that you're not overserved. But generally, you're going to go through this checkpoint, and you might have some information you're going to have to give the guy. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what will be expected, but you don't necessarily have to.
Right.
But here's the problem: when people, and you just hit on it, you don't think you're overserved.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what their alcohol level is. If I were to ask you, Jack, if you had 3 or 4 beers, would you have any idea what your alcohol level would be? Your answer:
no idea.
Okay, so
idea.
Nobody really knows.
Right.
You know, it's how you feel, but certainly nobody knows. So, but once you go through that process, and should you fortunately be directed to a place where they're going to investigate you further, then they're going to ask you to get out of the car. I mean, you should comply with the officer's orders. There's no question about that. You know, get out of the car. But then they're going to start to question you further. And if you see the officer, he's writing down notes or actually filling out a report, there's a good chance that you may be going to jail at that point.
Wow. Well, hold on for just a second.
Sure.
Because we are talking to Myles L. Berman, the Top Gun DUI Defense Attorney. I'm Jack Silver. I'm the Program Director, 95.5 KLOS.
And a great guy, by the way.
Well, an excellent guy. And you and I have spent many times together. And look, everybody wants to have a nice time. We're talking about the 4th of July.
Right.
And this is serious. We don't want people to drink and drive, obviously. But there are times when you might be in a situation like this. And I thought this would be good information for the listeners on KLOS.com, 95.5KLOS.com to know.
Well, let me just interject at this point. We don't want, and I don't want drunk drivers on the road as well. I mean, everybody wants safe roads. I want safe roads. People work for me. We all want safe roads. But the issue is that because of the process that's involved, and we'll talk about it a little as we go through this, that it oftentimes and usually is unfair the nature in which DUI cases are prosecuted. And so that's where, when you off the street and into the courtroom, that becomes a whole different ballgame.
Right, and that's where the listeners need you. And again, you know, that's what you've made a career about it. Sometimes, you know, people come to you in a situation like this. And so if it does happen, do I take an on-scene breath test? I've seen these guys, you got to blow into something, or I don't even know what the hell happens, but it seems like that's when, you know, trouble could happen.
Well, just before on-scene breath test occurs, there's a field sobriety test. And the field sobriety tests are completely voluntary, and people don't have to do them. And so usually we feel, and I feel, that how a person performs on the field sobriety test really is no correlation or connection between whether or not somebody's impaired. These are just the tests that the police use, because that's all the tools that they have. But within the field sobriety test is another portable breath test, usually. And if you're older than 21, then you have the right to refuse that breath test. And the officers are supposed to tell you that. See, breath testing, as far as I'm concerned, is extremely unreliable.
Is that right?
Yeah. To determine the alcohol level in your blood, it's almost impossible to use a breath test to make that determination. But just to give you an example, many times people, they get arrested for DUI and they have a .12 and a .14 breath test, or a .14 and a .12 breath test within 2 minutes of each other. Wow. But yet, you're saying, wow, it means like that's pretty high. It's, you know, 50%.
Well, no, it's high, but it's double. Also the fact that it's not always so.
That's my point.
From minute to minute to minute, your breath alcohol level will change. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not necessarily, but that's the way the machine measures it. But most importantly, your blood alcohol level doesn't fluctuate like that in 2 minute span, either up or down. So as you can see, breath testing is unreliable to predict the alcohol level in a person's blood. So you have the right to refuse that portable breath test.
Now, won't the cops say
before you're arrested?
But then
if you're older than 21,
don't the police officers assume that if you say no to the breath test that you've been drinking? Or, I mean, isn't that kind of
there's
like a double-edged sword?
You know, there's a good chance that if you're at a .08 or greater, or even a .07, I've seen them prosecute as low as a .03, .04. I've seen people get arrested for that low of an alcohol level. So these tests aren't reliable. So what the reaction of the officer is a good chance you're going to jail anyway. So why would you give them more information than you need to, or than you already have up until that point in time?
Well, let's do this, because obviously if people want to get a hold of you, it's 888-4-TOP-GUN. That's your phone number at your office. Your website is topgundui.com. And my suggestion is for people to know about this stuff. If you stay in the closet and you cover your head and you realize that these things aren't happening, you're more likely to be involved in something you don't want to be, but then they should contact you. Like I see some guys, big heavy-set guys. Looks like they can drink more than me. Then you see some of the smaller people and they're pounding down the drinks. So how do you know when you have had too much to drink? And shouldn't you just call the cab, have your friend drive?
Well, the best thing to do if you're drinking is not to drive. I mean, if you can get somebody else, or if you take a cab, or somehow figure out a way that you don't have to drive, that's your best way of not being stopped, investigated, arrested for DUI. Because going through this can be absolutely devastating. It could be a life changer in a negative way.
You say that in your commercial. Really, you're going to lose. You can have a loss of license, correct? I've had a buddy couple who have lost their license for 6 months. Guy was driving a nice car. Now he's on the Wilshire bus going up and back. It's very demoralizing. Could you lose your job?
Sure. As a matter of fact, there's many companies that require people, especially if you're driving, if you drive for a living, or if you're a salesperson, right, and you're insured through work. The insurance the insurance companies through work every 6 months they do a check, yeah, and they may require you to be conviction-free, certainly not DUI. Professionals, we represent a lot of doctors, lawyers. Actually, we represent police officers too. Yeah. And anybody who's licensed by the state, if you're convicted of DUI, the courts and the prosecutors or the clerk's office, they're required to notify the state licensing agencies, mm-hmm, if you're convicted of DUI. So these things can have, yeah, a severe consequence on somebody's job. Not to mention if they're borderline to begin with, or if they're on probation while they're first starting work. So yes, a DUI can cause somebody to become unemployed. It happens a lot.
See, that's
also for citizenship as well. By the way.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, the people are precluded from becoming a citizen. But one thing that's happened, and this has been going on since 9/11, and more significantly the last 3 or 4 years, an American citizen who's convicted of DUI tries to go to Canada, they'll send you back. Oh. You can't even get into Canada with a DUI conviction.
Well, maybe that's a good thing. You ever been to Canada? Too many foreigners. No, all right, come on. We're talking.
Are you saying those are the ones that couldn't get into the States? Is that what you're suggesting, Jack?
Well, and speaking of those people, they drink a lot of beer up there too. So here's the bottom line. It's very important that people know about this stuff, Myles, because just like nobody wants to have to be involved in this situation, but right, they should call a Top Gun DUI defense attorney. Myles L. Berman specifically. It's like if you're getting divorced. Nobody wants to get a divorce, but you're going to go out and get the best attorney that you possibly can. And I think that's the important takeaway for this. So to kind of tie a bow around it, if the situation arises and you're arrested for DUI, in a nutshell, what should someone do?
Well, they have the right, again, all I can do is say what their rights are. They have the right to refuse the officer's questions, aside from showing identification, driver's license, registration, but they don't have to say where they're coming from, where they're going to. Mm-hmm. They don't have to do the field sobriety test. Before arrest, they don't have to take the portable breath test. Mm-hmm. Now, once you're arrested, and if you are arrested, then you have a choice of a blood or a breath test. So, people, your audience, the audience is very smart. If I keep saying that the breath test machine is the most unreliable, then people may want to consider taking that as opposed to taking a blood test. But at the same time, a blood test, this is what people generally think on a blood test, that they ask for a blood test, and it will delay maybe 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, before the blood draw actually occurs. And that won't necessarily save them from a prosecution, mm-hmm, because the prosecutors will relate back to the time of driving what the alcohol level was.
I see.
Based on
so you're not
occurred.
Gaining anything by postponing it, thinking that the alcohol will diminish in your system?
For the DUI prosecution in court. However, whenever somebody's arrested for DUI, and by the way, first offense in L.A. County, there's 4 or 5 pilot counties in the state, but if you get convicted of a first offense DUI in LA County, you have to have an ignition interlock device on any car that you own or have access to.
Oh, is that the thing where you literally have to blow into like a hose?
Correct.
The car won't start.
Correct.
Oh, good.
Now, you don't know from personal experience.
No, I don't.
I always enjoy getting a smile out of you,
Jack. As it
turns
out, I know a lot about this stuff, but it's always a friend of mine, Myles.
Regarding the DMV, that's a separate procedure.
Yeah.
So if sometimes they delay and take a blood test and that comes back under a point of weight, the DMV then may not take action. So it's a balancing act.
Well, look, there's a lot to learn, and I think the reason we did this, especially around the 4th of July, is that so people can at least start thinking about this stuff. And we always recommend, don't drink and drive. Definitely don't get overserved. But in case it ever happens, 888-4TOP-GUN is your number. They can go to your website, which is topgundui.com, and listen to the commercials on the radio. The commercials that you have on KLOS are very informative, and we hope that that you don't need Myles' services. But if you do, just like I didn't want a divorce attorney, but I needed one. I wish you were one, Myles. That would have saved me a couple of bucks. But if you do, it's Myles L. Berman, our Top Gun DUI defense attorney. Thanks for checking us out at 955KLOS.com, and Happy 4th of July.
Thanks, and I want to wish the audience a very happy, healthy, and safe and sober 4th of July holiday.
Yes, and please, no Speedos at the pool this year, boys. Okay? Thanks much. How about some board shorts?